my body completely changed. I remember what had happened during that period. I remember what had happened during that period. I remember what had happened. Hey, how's it going? My name is Yusuf. It's nice to meet you. This is the story of how at one of the most peak moments of my entire life, I had actually been the most miserable that I had ever been. At the age of 19, I was making $10,000 a month as a salesman for Verizon, or for Sisaki, which is a third-party retailer of Verizon. And during this period, my life had been categorized exclusively by outward success. For example, I had a really high paying job. I had a nice car, which was practically paid off. I had moved out of my parents' home and I was living with my friends. And I had $40,000 of savings in my bank account. $40,000. At the time, I had no idea what to even do with that money. I wish I had 40 grand right now. I wish. But yeah, at the time I had so much money, I didn't even know what to do with it. And seemingly everything was perfect. However, despite all of the external success, very quickly I was coming up on one of the darkest moments of my entire life. Leading up to COVID, I had been falling out of touch with this job. I myself am an individual who gets really moved by the learning process. Like if I'm curious about something, I will learn about it day and night. And that's what this job was when I first came into it. It was a sales job and I had never worked a sales job that was face-to-face. I'd always worked door-to-door sales. And this job in particular was so interesting because the earning potential was so high and there was such a low barrier to entry. So when I got in, I was learning left and right. I remember asking so many questions to all the veterans, the top guys who were there. And I remember, actually, it was a friend of mine and we were the youngest guys who were in the market. And when we got in there, we took the entire market by storm. There was about 40 representatives in our market. And within a couple of months, I had taken like one of the top 3 spots. However, once I got to that point where I was making $10,000 a month on average, what had happened was I really started to fall out of touch with the job. You know, the job was no longer something which was fun and exciting. It didn't challenge me as much anymore because I had already kind of understood the lay of the land. I had already kind of understood the way that things work. So what had happened was when I fell out of touch with this job, it turned from a place of opportunity to a prison of complacency. And I was doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then what they started to do was also add more work, more obstacles and hurdles that it would take to earn the same paycheck that it did in the beginning. And you see, as these feelings of dissatisfaction started to come up, I no longer resonated with the success that came from that job. All those external things which once brought me happiness, the car, moving away from my parents, having a whole bunch of money in the savings, I no longer saw those things as like prizes of my hard work. I saw them as an extension of this job that I fell out of touch with. And the big part about this was that because I was doing something which was unfulfilling, I felt like so much of my time and so much of my days were lost. And during this time, I remember I was spending a lot of time with my friends who they were also pretty complacent in their jobs and in their lives. And it didn't create this energy that I was looking for, this energy of like excitement, this energy of like, let's do something challenging, let's do something new. And at that moment, the pandemic hit. So my relationships were at an all-time low. I hated the job that I was working and I felt like I literally couldn't go back there because it was soul-sucking. There's nothing for me at that job. There's no reason for me to go back. And as a result, I started to really feel shitty about myself. My body started to internalize all of these emotions that I wasn't processing. I was feeling a lot of anger, resentment, hopelessness, like despair, shame, guilt, because I was taking all of the blame for the way that things were unfolding in my life. And because I didn't release any of it just kept building up until eventually my body just started to wreak havoc on itself. I remember what had happened during that period was that my body completely started to change. My hair started to fall out, my nails turned to chalk white, my skin started to change drastically. I remember that my diet had to change because 80 to 90% of the foods that I was normally able to eat, I was no longer able to eat because they would cause my body to flare up. During that period, I had randomly developed all these different conditions, and it wasn't by coincidence. It was a result of me not releasing the emotions and the experiences that were happening inside of my body. And I share all of this for a reason. This isn't a sob story because I was at a really dark moment in my life. And now, 5 years later, things have considerably changed. See, before, I had all of the metrics of what it meant to be successful. And the reason why I share all of this is because despite living with my parents, despite being $25,000 in credit card debt, despite driving my mother's car, I am so much happier than when I was back then with all of the external metrics of success. And I've never felt more self-worth in my entire life than I have at this moment right now. So moving forward, what you can expect on this channel is the process of self-mastery through trial and error. You see, even back then, despite being in that really deep and dark place, I knew I was destined for great things. I knew I had a crazy amount of potential. I just didn't know how to materialize it. I just didn't know how to live the life that I wanted to live. And in those 5 years, I have died and been reborn time and time again. So now I'm making these videos here to show myself and to show you that you can materialize your potential, that you can tap into your potential, and that you can rebuild yourself from any point in your life and live the life that you want to live. So I just have one simple question for you. Why not you? I'll see you on the next one.